Hi, this is Professor Cummings, and last time we were here, in the last video, it was part 3, we discussed and did an example of a fictional character named Joe and his student loans. We said it was a $40,000 student loan with 4.53% interest and a standard term of 10 years, and it was simple fixed interest. So just a run-of-the-mill standard student loan that Joe got out. And we did some comparison between a subsidized version of that loan and an unsubsidized version of that same loan. And we looked into what the payments were on both of those, as well as the fact that what it would take to actually pay the loan off in 10 years. We saw that the subsidized student loan was total interest payment of $9,800, and the total interest on the unsubsidized was $15,000. And the main reason or the only reason, was because during unsubsidized student loans, you're paying interest all the way during when you're in your college, your deferment period. So during the deferment period, you're still paying and accruing interest. And that made a pretty big difference in the total amount of interest that he was paying. What I want to look at in this video was considering a few other scenarios, not just this one really simplistic one. So what if Joe makes enough money? If he does, he's not going to have any problem paying that debt. So let's consider a few other situations. If Joe doesn't think he can afford this debt, is there something he can do about these payments? What you can see is we went to loanforgiveness.org, and we were able to get some information on this loan forgiveness process. So again, most repayment plans, and there are several repayment plans out there. You can go to your student loan servicer if you have a federal loan. These are all still federal loans. These aren't for private loans. And most of them are income based. They're based on how much you make. And there's a few other stipulations, but keep in mind, federal loans, they do have repayment plans, and they're based on your income. And if Joe were making $40,000 versus $80,000, you would see a completely different experience with these repayment plans. It may even be discouraged for him to go after a certain point. You'll see this through the numbers that we'll work through with a later example. So a few things to keep in mind. You can't bankrupt student loans. The only way they can get bankrupted is through death or some sort of disability where you can no longer work. So that's the first thing to keep in mind with student loans. People have to pay off their student loans full. Since you don't get to bankrupt them, you're going to pay them off full without a repayment plan. But back in 2010, President Obama signed something called the Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act in 2010, also known as the Obama Student Loan Forgiveness Program. So he made some modifications and updates to the student loan forgiveness programs. One thing is there are no more subsidies for private lenders. New borrowers can get student loan forgiveness, in 20 to 25 years. So it'll take 20 to 25 years to actually get that student loan forgiveness. And starting in 2014, new student loan borrowers can qualify for monthly payments equal to 10% of their discretionary income. And that's at the low end. We'll go through some other examples of what is out there, but the lowest end is 10% of your discretionary income, and we are to also define what discretionary income is. So that's some of the stipulations. If you get a student loan forgiveness at this point, this is what you're looking at. Now, there are several student loan forgiveness programs, and they have a lot of things in common. And I've got bolded in red of the ones I think are the most important to the examples that I want to do. And one is they have to be reassessed every year. You apply, every year, and they reassess your situation. So things can change depending on your lifestyle, your circumstances. They're based in your family size or your household size. You're a new borrower only after October 2007. Your spouse's income, if you do get married, becomes factored into the cases of your household income. Private loans aren't eligible, and the unpaid interest is capitalized. Now, if you remember in presentation or video number 1, we discussed the terms of capitalization, and capitalization is when something gets rolled into the principal. Basically, it adds to your principal. So this is saying your unpaid interest gets added into the interest in these student loan forgiveness programs. So that's something they all have in common. And these, there is some changes, some mixing and matches between the type of student loan you get and the type of repayment plan you get. But in all cases, this is sort of a bottom line, baseline set of rules you can expect with all your student loan forgiveness programs. So let's go through some of the repayment plans. So I want to look at 4 different ones. One is called the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, ICR. That is based on 20% of your discretionary income, and your loans are forgiven in 25 years. All right. There's the Income-Based Repayment Plan, one of the most popular, IBR, and that's based around 15% of your income. For grad school, undergrad, it's actually 10%, but it's a 25-year plan as well. And then there's a pay-as-you-earn, and that's a 10% of your discretionary income in 20-year plan. And then there's a revised pay-as-you-earn, which is 10% and a 25-year plan. So keep this in mind. You're looking at that 20%, 15%, 10%. That's the percent of your discretionary income. Okay. Now that 25 years, that's what's going to replace the term. So instead of paying that loan off in 10 years, the way you would if you took the standard loan repayment, now you have changed the terms, the length of the loan to 25 or 10 or 20 years. So that's really important, and I'll show you why that's important in a second here. But first, what is this discretionary income that I've mentioned a couple of times already? Well, there's actually a formula for that discretionary income, and it's actually fairly simple. It's discretionary income is your household income, your adjusted gross income, minus 150% of the federal poverty line guideline, our federal poverty guideline. So it's pretty simple what it is, and it comes out in the examples like about a little over $19,000. And you can get this calculator to figure out your adjusted gross income, your discretionary income. That's something called the collegeinvestor.com. They have a calculator. It does it automatically. All you got to do is put in your circumstances, because it does change depending on whether or not the number of people in your household. So again, if you've got that $19,000 number I gave you, that's assuming you are single, no children. But if it starts getting more complicated the more people you have in your household. So it does adjust. So you can go to the calculator, put in your circumstances, the collegeinvestor.com, and get a more solid number, a more tailored number to your situation. But let's look at Joe, our hypothetical student here named Joe. And we consider 2 circumstances. One is where he's making $40,000, one where he's making $80,000. We're going to keep him single, no kids. If we go to that calculator, you can see that his discretionary income at $40,000 is $21,790 per year. That's his discretionary income. At $80,000, it's $61,790 per year. All right, and then you can see the breakdown if we look at the different plans. 10% of his discretionary income is a little over $2,000. 15% is a little over $3,000, and 20% is $4,358 at $40,000 per year. If you were making $80,000, that goes up to $6,179 at 10%. 15% is a little over $9,000, and 20% is $12,358,000. And when you consider that it's 10% or 15% or 20% of your discretionary income, these would be your annual payments, based around that discretionary income amount. So you can see the plan does break things down quite a bit. Now, here's some things I want to fill you in before we go through. I've got some examples I wanted to show you comparing the standard plan with a repayment plan. and so you can see what you're actually doing. But before we do that, I want to do a little bit of review and a little bit of kind of clarification. So first thing I want to point out is after the repayment period, that 20-year or 25-year, depending on the repayment plan, the loan is forgiven. But there's a catch to that, forgiveness. The loan during that 20 or 25-year period is not amortized, meaning it's not paid off. We discussed that in, I think, presentation number 2, video number 2, part 2 of this series. The unpaid interest is capitalized into the loan principal. That is very, very important. So your loan is not amortized, meaning it's not paid off at the end of that period. It's just going to be forgiven at the end of that period. So you're not paying the full interest throughout this forgiveness period. You're paying less than the interest in most cases. And so the principal is actually growing. That unpaid interest gets carried over from one year to the next. That's how it is that you hear people saying they've been paying on their student loan debt for years and the balance goes up. This is one of the ways that can happen. The principal grows, again, during the term of the loan. Or it can grow during the term, and the remaining balance, again, at the end of that 20 or 25 years of you paying without any interruption, that remaining balance is considered taxable income, whatever that happens to be. In the case of Joe, it'll be $40,000 plus whatever unpaid interest he packed on top of that will now be considered part of his income. And that is after the 20 to 25 years of him paying on that loan. So hence why I have the little bear trap here to kind of show you this is where student loan debts kind of people don't understand, and where this can come back to create some of these stories that you hear online. So keep in mind that we also have here is 3 things, and this kind of blew itself up out of the water. There are 4 things that I want you to keep in mind with loans. One is the interest rate, the terms, the time, and the principal. What these repayment plans do is they change the principal and they change the time amount. And, you got a whole new set of terms that you're dealing with. So when you do this, keep in mind that this is part of the problem. This is part of what's being changed. The only thing that stays the same is the interest that you're being charged. And this is part 2 of the series. Now, also, what is amortization? Again, just the action or process of reducing or paying off debt with regular payments. So actually paying it off, killing off the loan. That was something we discussed in part 1. Also, when we looked at Joe's original payment, something I wanted to keep back in mind, we went to that calculator where we had $40,000, there's 4.5% interest rate over 10 years, and we calculated it at $415 per month would be his payment, and those payments were gradually paying more and more of his principal down until it was completed. With your student loan forgiveness programs, you're just paying a fixed payment, but you're not paying off the loan. You're not paying into that principal. So the principal doesn't get touched, or barely gets touched in some cases, but in most cases it's not even getting touched. Hence why the loan grows. Then this pays it off in 10 years. So at the end of 10, you're done. So let's look at a few examples. So again, we got Joe here. We got the same loan that we're going to look at for a standard for the kind of the control. $40,000, 4.53% interest, 10 years, simple interest that's fixed over the life of the loan. It's subsidized, meaning there is no interest being paid throughout his college career or during the deferment period. His monthly interest or his monthly payment is going to be $450 a month. We saw from the calculator. It'll be in 10 years. And at the end of that 10-year period, he would have paid $49,800 total. That would complete his payment to this loan. And he could walk away. The loan was retired and he's done. Joe was 22. He's done at 32. Now, let's look at this. Pay as you earn. So this is the first one. You're paying 10% of your discretionary income. Now, we already calculated what 10%, if he's making $40,000. That's another assumption we're going to make. He's making $40,000. He is single with no children. So a household of 1. His monthly payment is now $181.58 per month. It'll be over 20 years. So his total payment for that 20-year period, again, pay as you earn, is going to be $3,580. And whatever the balance is, which will be 40,000 plus, it'll be taxed as income. So at the end of 20 years, he'll have this jump in his income, and he's going to have to pay the interest or pay the taxes on that balance, that final balance. So that is what he would get if he does the pay as you earn. Under certain circumstances, now we didn't make the assumption that his income is never going up, which isn't likely the case. We made the assumption that he's never going to be married, never going to have children, so we just basically kept his situation stagnant. So keep that in mind when you look at these examples. Now, what about the IBR, income-based repayment plan? Well, that's 15% of his discretionary income. His payment goes up to $272, so it's still not too bad, not quite half of what his original payment was, so not too bad, but it'll be for 25 years. Remember the 4 things, and time was one of the 4. His interest stays the same. His total payments now go to $81,726, and he's still taxed at the balance. And just for the record, I got another calculator. The collegeinvestor.com was where I got this information, or I was able to, use for my numbers on this particular one. So the ICR program, which is 20% of your discretionary income, that's $363.71. So still less than your standardized loan, but 25 years. And your total payments will be $109,113, or $109,113. And again, you're taxed on the balance at the end. So that is what happens with Joe's scenario. If he goes to an income-based repayment plan, that there are some hidden costs there, that it's going to cost him a lot more in the long run in some cases, but it'll definitely eat up a lot more of his time. But he does get some short-term, some relief from month to month in the earlier stages of his career, if that's what he's concerned with. So my next part to this series is going to be, what are some ways to deal with student loans? So, you see what 2 scenarios. Again, I'll admit that these are simplistic scenarios I've given you, but they, are pretty, solid in terms of the information I've given you. I haven't added every single contingency in. So what can you do as far as paying for college? How can you circumvent some of these potential problems? So that'll be what I'll tackle in the next video. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment or a like, or both, and I'll talk to you soon.